Welcome to the story of Mary's story. This is Pecha Kucha, which is not really about the story of Mary's story, although it kind of is. It's about the story of an idea. It's about what happens when you wake up with an idea and where that idea may or may not take you and how it may or may not take over your life, as it seems to have done mine. In February 2011, I would say I could tell you everything I knew about breast cancer and write it on the back of a postage stamp and have room to spare. I didn't really know anything about it. The only thing I knew was I was looking for a lump, and to tell you the truth, I wasn't even looking. And then I got involved with a campaign, which was all about raising awareness of the symptoms of breast cancer and telling people what they needed to know. And it was inspiring. The people I was with was amazing. And I was so energised and enthused by this. I suddenly kind of thought, well, I know all this information, and if I didn't know it, then maybe other people don't know it. And suddenly I've got this vision and image of telling the rest of the world, making sure that everybody knows, in this kind of strangely arrogant way that somehow other people have tried this and I'm going to succeed where they failed. I don't know, anyway. So I'm sat there thinking, how can I make this work? What could I do? What could I do? One person, what can I do to get this message out there so that other people know this information I know? And I kind of, was my mind a blank? It wasn't blank. But it was filled with just one thing, which was this whole horrible idea that it becomes about boobs and it gets a bit like, ugh. And I didn't want it to be a kind of gratuitous thing about boobs. And I couldn't see any way to get round this. So I'm lying in bed, I was asleep, and all this stuff is going around in my head. And I'd recently read this fantastic book by a guy called Dan Roan called Solving Complex Problems with Simple Pictures. And I think that was the key. I think that must have been the key in the mix. And I woke up this one morning, and there's this idea bursting to get out of my head, and it's insistent, and it's like waking up with a full bladder. There was no going back to sleep. There was no pretending it wasn't 4 o'clock in the morning. This idea was in my brain, and it was the simplest idea. And I guess that made it magical in some way, because it was a circle and a triangle. A circle and a triangle, that was it. The idea, my big breakthrough, was as simple as a circle and a triangle. And at this point, I'm starting to feel a little bit nuts, but I'm also starting to feel quite excited. So I go downstairs and I draw a line and put another circle on it, and suddenly I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I've really got something here. And it was kind of difficult to share. I was trying to explain it to my husband, and he was like, yeah, whatever. And then this circle, a big circle, got some eyes and a smile and some thumbs up. And suddenly I had a character. I had something someone who could talk about breast cancer without it being gratuitous in any way. But it's about the symptoms of breast cancer, so something needed to change this character. So one of her boobs gets a bit bigger, and she doesn't really know how to react to that, and she's staring at it, and I love the way her eyes kind of just went, what? What's going on here? And suddenly I was so engrossed in it, and I got bored of calling her the character, so she got a name, and she's called Mary, and I don't really know why she's called Mary. It doesn't make any sense, but anyway, she's called Mary, and she has a story to tell, and her story is to help people diagnose the symptoms of breast cancer, because if you diagnose the symptoms, if you know what the symptoms are and you go to your doctor and you get diagnosed early, you're on the red line here. You've got really, really good chances of survival. If you go late, you're on the black line, and I don't want women to be diagnosed late when they could be diagnosed early and it could save their life. Ultimately, this isn't Mary's story. This is a story that happens to 1.38 million people around the world every year. Some of them men and some of them women. 50,000 women in the UK and 500 men every year are diagnosed. So if Mary's story helps people know the symptoms and encourages them to check their breasts and take this seriously, my hope is that they'll live longer, that they'll live the lives so they're supposed to live, that breast cancer might be a difficult time, but it's no worse than breaking a leg, and they'll survive. So within a couple of weeks from the waking up with this idea, Mary's story is finished and it's on YouTube. And within 2 weeks of that, 1,000 people have watched it. And if I think 1,000 people have watched it, that's 1,000 lives potentially that I could save. And I wanted to pay it back. I wanted to share this back with the person who'd inspired me. So I sent it to Dan Roan thinking he's never going to read this email and yada, yada, yada. And within a few minutes of sending the email, I get this amazing email back. But it's not about what Dan Roan says or anything else. It inspired me to continue on. So the campaign wasn't just about breast cancer, it's about bowel cancer as well. So I've started on the story of Jack and John, who you can see here in the 70s, because they've known each other forever. Anyway, if you want to know more about Mary's story, please watch the video, because it will just save your life. And it can be found on marystory.co.uk. So if you feel anything, if you notice anything that doesn't feel right for you, please go to your doctor. It might just save your life.